So welcome everyone. I'm Selina. I'm chair of the Working Group 2 on Faith and Violence Against Children. I know some of you. And today in our Alumni Skills Lab, we should have a mix of people. We've got some graduates from our Faith and Helping Children Thrive Without Violence course, and also some people from our wider working groups, Working Group 2 and Working Group 3. And the aim in this session is to build on the trust and the dialogues we develop within our course to continue to talk about difficult issues, but also to open it up to others to participate as well. Please do remember that there are survivors of violence against women and or children in this room today, and we commit together to ensure that this session feels safe for them to both participate and contribute. So please make sure you think about that and engage in trauma-informed ways. We do have quite a lot of content to get through today. So this is not a space which is focusing on sharing in-depth survivor stories. We don't have the capacity to hold those stories in a way that is safe for you. So if you need further support in this respect, please reach out to me or Noor after the session. This is a difficult topic, so please think about your own self-care and managing your triggers as we're going to discuss some difficult issues. Basic housekeeping rules apply, so keep yourself muted. Put your videos on if it's possible, especially when you're in your small groups. Please raise your hand if you've got a question. And please do use the reactions and the chat. Introduce yourself in the chat and keep the chat going. We hope to have space for everyone to contribute within the time we have together. And remember, we are co-creating this skills lab together. The Skills Lab is being recorded and it will be more publicly shared. So please do bear this in mind in terms of what you decide to share in the larger group. Noor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina. I hope everybody knows me, but let me introduce myself. My name is Noor Rehman. I am the graduate of Faith and Helping Children Thrive Without Violence course, and as well as I am also working with Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities. So today I am glad to host you with Dr. Selina, and in our previous skill labs, our polls showed that people particularly want to talk about the areas where harmful beliefs may persist and how to address this. So in this session, Dr. Selina and I will co-hold space for us to learn together how to better understand how and why religious leaders may resist change on this issue of child marriage and to explore some of the strategies to address this resistance. It is important to state up front that not all religious leaders resist ending child marriage, and some of have been huge allies for positive change. However, organization working to end child marriage still needs to identify religious leaders and their resistance as well as the barriers for ending child marriages. The research we are drawing today focused exclusively on engagement with religious leaders across Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism who have opposed actions to end the practices of child marriage and who have used arguments based on religion. Just think for a moment, if all religious leaders refuse to perform these ceremonies, most child marriage would stop. I'll be adding in my own current experiences as a Muslim practitioners working with faith leaders across South Asia. So today, this is our interactive session, and we hope to hear and learn from each one of you. And the content we give is hopefully help for structuring our discussion and offering some skills. But the aim of this session is for you to interact with each other. So we want to keep the discussion focused on faith. We want to keep our discussion focused on faith-related issues today through we know that child marriage is influenced by other things too. So the structure of these 2 hours will look like we will be providing some of the context. Dr. Selina will be providing some of the content on how and why some religious leaders seem to be resisting ending child marriage, and we want to invite you to share in the chat as we go anything comes from you to listen. Then we will be going into small groups where we will be sharing what we are seeing in our context in relation with how religious leaders might resist early child marriage and then we will have a report back in plenary. After a short break, we will be having a body break as well. So after a short body break, we will move into our second half of where we will be focusing on strategies and tips shared by practitioners for addressing these forms of religious resistance. I will share some of the content from examples from Muslim school of thought and as well as from the perspective which we are working previously. You will have to a chance to do some same in the same small groups, and then we will hear key highlights from each one group in plenary. So I really want to encourage. We have tailored this session to focus on religious resistance only to engage in the question with others. So because this is something which we holding back change, but we are also hoping to hear examples of what you are seeing in your context and religious leaders on the issues of child marriage. We will be now going back to Dr. Selina to hear from her on the on the research. Please, Dr. Selina.
Thanks, Noor. And just a caveat, I'm managing the tech myself today. We don't have a technical support, so apologies if it doesn't always run super smoothly. Just bear with me. So religious resistance is what I call a suitcase word. There's lots of things within it that we actually need to unpack, and that's part of what we're going to do today. What does it actually look like? What's inside this suitcase, and how can we unpack it? And then once we have unpacked it, do we need to throw away that religious resistance suitcase entirely, or can we repack them differently? Can our religious resistance be used to resist child marriage instead of resisting ending child marriage? As we all know, child marriage results from the interplay of various factors, and it happens across many countries, cultures, ethnicities, and religions. There is no single religion that is solely associated with child marriage. We also know that religious leaders often hold considerable power and authority in their communities, and that engaging them can be an important part of the range of approaches needed to change attitudes and behaviours related to child marriage. While some effective approaches have been documented in terms of working with progressive religious leaders, we know that many organisations working on this issue highlight the challenge they face of resistant religious leaders and their attitudes, and they say this is an obstacle to making progress on ending child marriage. And it's therefore this particular suitcase that we're going to unpack today. Some of you may live in contexts where this resistance is strong, and some may live in contexts where it's less strong. So I'm not going to give you detail about the methodology. I did a research study with my colleague Lisa LaRue in 2018, For Girls Not Brides, which focuses on ending child marriage. And the study focused on those three religions, Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam, and on countries with high rates of child marriage. I will send you a link to the copy of the detailed report. We did a literature review and key informant interviews across those faiths and 12 different countries. And you can see some of the countries named there. It's not a toolkit, it is a research report, but some of the highlights are going to be what I'm sharing with you today. And it was a small study. But just so you know, that's where some of the information we're sharing today is going to be coming from. And I'm going to jump straight into key findings. So what are we seeing? What did we see? I'm going to be sharing the report findings, some of the key tools from there, and Noor is going to be adding from his experience, obviously very up-to-date experience in Pakistan in particular. So the first tool I want to introduce you to is what we called the resistance wheel. And this is where we spent some time looking across multiple countries in terms of how are religious leaders in particular being seen as resisting in different contexts, and did we see commonalities? And 6 ways emerged around how we saw religious leaders commonly resisting. And I want to say that understanding how religious leaders are resisting is an important first step in identifying and unpacking the suitcase of religious resistance in your own specific contexts. And this offers us a little typology. So first, we see some religious leaders resisting through vocal dissent or backlash, speaking out publicly, particularly to laws reforming child marriage. We see this in places as diverse as Trinidad, Bangladesh, Tanzania, Yemen, and also in Pakistan. We're going to hear more about that later. Second, we may see religious leaders resisting through various forms of silent or hidden resistance. We may all have examples in our own context where leaders may agree to something in public, but in private they say something different. Third, we see some religious leaders resisting through their actions. So in Zimbabwe, for example, some religious leaders themselves are taking child brides. And despite declarations saying that they condemn child marriage, we know that many religious leaders are still conducting ceremonies. So we say one thing, but we do another. Fourth, they may resist by scapegoating or stigmatizing those that are opposing child marriage. They may position them as religious or moral deviants. For example, I engaged with sisters in Islam who work in Malaysia and in other places, and they were stigmatized as being blasphemous to Islam in what they were saying, with a fatwa, sort of a religious restriction taken out against them, saying that what they were doing was wrong. So the stigmatization of those who are working to end child marriage. Fifth, we may see religious leaders resist through spiritual or ethical resistance. This is where they specifically use sacred texts or sacred stories or sacred rituals to endorse the practice of child marriage as somehow divinely allowed or ordained. And finally, we see religious leaders resisting indirectly. So they'll take an issue that's indirectly related to child marriage, such as girl child education or mobility of girls once they become adolescents to go out into the world. And they'll be critical of that and they'll stand against that. And that's an issue that indirectly has an impact on child marriage. So these are just some examples. I hope they kind of get you buzzing in terms of thinking ways in which these kinds of resistance can combine. We'll often see more than one in operation, and they can be very effective. So Habibur, who I interviewed from Bangladesh, I think the quote is up on the screen, notes and says, in our community, people don't challenge the religious leader. They're very much conscious about, after this, what happens if they don't follow the God rules. So that can be a fear that the people, they're a bit afraid to challenge the religious leader because now maybe there will be problems, in the next life if we are not just obeying what the rules are. And I think this quote just shows so incredibly well the particular power and authority that religious leaders can have on topics such as this. Noor, I want to hand over to you just for a little bit. Like I'm giving sort of some abstract ways in which religious leaders resist, but in your context, maybe you can just share briefly, how are you seeing religious leaders resisting on this issue of child marriage in your context?
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina. I hope many of the participants of this workshop might know that like Pakistan is a country which have recently passed the laws against ending child marriage, and now the official age is 18. But as per the religion, the Islam Muslim school of thought, the age for getting married is the puberty. When a girl or boy gets the age of puberty, they are allowed to marry. So some of the religious leaders, like one of the renowned institution, which is Council of Islamic Ideology, they are actually supporting the ending child marriages because with their support, this laws has been passed from the parliament as well as from the National Assembly of Pakistan, and there is a one sort of a terminology which is terminologies as well as the logics behind the ending child marriage, because if you nobody can compares himself with Prophet peace be upon him, because the character of Prophet peace be upon him is very up to the mark, and the way some historian says that when Hazrat Aisha Raziyallahu Ta'ala who was getting married to Prophet peace be upon him, her age was 9. Some says her age was 15. Some says her age was 12. So in this case, we cannot, as a common Muslim, we cannot compare ourselves with the Prophet peace be upon him. And as you said that like most of the religious leaders in our country, they are resisting the child marriage. And one of the famous and renowned politician and religious leader Maulana Fazl Rahman Sahab, he said that like if I got angry with this legislation and the law passed by the parliament, I will get married to the girl of age 10. This is actually showing the conservative sort of mindset behind, but like there are many verses of Quran which is actually supporting to end the child marriage, because there is a word rushd. Rushd mean, it's an Arabic word which means wisdom. When a girl or boy has it's the verse which is coming from the Quran is about the orphan children. That when orphan children get to the age of 18 and they have the rushd, they have the wisdom, then hand over their property or inheritance of their parents to them. So that means the rushd or wisdom is very important. So physical and there are, this is a dialogue which need to be done in a safe spaces where we can bring all the religious leaders and discuss all these things in a safe environment where there is no fear of, as you said, blasphemy, or there is no fear of violating the God rule. So I think this need to be handled with the with the beliefs, logics, and spiritual teachings. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Selina.
No, thank you so much. And in our second half of today, we're going to be exploring in small groups some of those strategies. But I just wanted to highlight, and Noor's done that well, that we actually see these forms of resistance playing out right now in communities, these forms of spiritual resistance and the way in which they're sacralized. I've put a link in the chat just exploring a little more detail about what's going on in Pakistan in relation to child marriage now. So feel free to take a look at that. So, a second key finding that we had after we looked at how religious leaders are resisting was to have a better understanding of why religious leaders are resisting. What are the roots or drivers that underpin why religious leaders may be resisting? It doesn't come from nowhere, like Noor was saying there. There's usually a logic behind it. And the social norms tree, which you'll see up, some of you are familiar with this. I use this to talk about various harmful practices. Is a useful way to think about this particular aspect, which I found one of the most interesting aspects of the research. If we think of harmful practices such as child early marriage sitting at the top, and then we think of the trunk of harmful social norms that normalize patterns. So if a girl gets pregnant, she needs to be married so the child can be provided for. Things that people might think are normal within a society. But these norms are fueled by root beliefs. And these root core beliefs and values are often influenced directly or indirectly by religion. We know that resistance takes different forms, but these are the 7 key roots of religious resistance, which we saw across multiple faiths and multiple countries. Again, you don't reduce them to just one root cause, they're often overlapping roots. And I'm going to run through them again super fast. And then Noor will give a brief example from his context, and then we're going to move into small groups. So, first, marriage as a religious ritual. And this is what's so interesting about child marriage. The role of arranging and performing marriages is part of a religious leader ritual. It's part of their visibility, value, and identity within communities. So while increased regulation by state has emerged, this is contested by some religious leaders. And it may shape their resistance to marriage regulations overall. So I'm going to move to my next slide. I'm going to go through each one of these. So I frame this as it's our turf, so hands off. Religious leaders may be very reluctant for the state or the laws to set rules around marriage because the authority is seen to lie with religious authorities alone. So this is the first one we're seeing. Second, many religious leaders may be unaware of the negative consequences of child marriage, in particular the health consequences, but not only the health consequences. This invisibility of many of the physical and social consequences of child marriage, such as intimate partner abuse and maternal health, may underpin their ongoing willingness to perform these ceremonies. Third, we can see that within Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, they all have sacred stories and texts that can be and have been interpreted by some as supporting forms of child marriage. We know that some religious leaders resist efforts to end child marriage because they genuinely believe that their religion either requires or allows it. Fourth, in all 3 religions and in all of the regions studied, we saw religious leader resistance was shaped by a religiously driven fear and condemnation of sex, contraception, and pregnancy outside of marriage. This took different forms in different areas, But this is a really interesting one. This was my favorite in a way, because it was kind of saying that religious leaders would say we don't agree with child marriage in principle, but in certain situations it's a lesser evil than something else. So this can lead to religious leaders endorsing or allowing child marriage seen as a solution to another problem, especially in the case of girls. Fifth, child marriage upholds and manifests patriarchal power. And we know that many male religious leaders in particular, but some female ones as well, resist the loss of this kind of power. Marriage and family are key areas where religion and patriarchy are entwined. We know that there is often a sacralized history of gender inequality, which nurtures the unquestioned male authority and guardianship of women and children. So the idea the father makes a decision in the house for what happens to women and children and when they're married. Child marriage reinforces these patriarchal beliefs, which religions can misuse to underpin and reinforce these unequitable gender norms as natural and even as God ordained. Sixth, in the light of these sexual taboos and the paternal family models which are entangled in so much of our religion, child marriage can even be framed as a form of parental protection from wider social violence, shame, and stigma. And we saw that this often intensifies in fragile, high risk, or conflict ridden spaces where parental fears for children's safety, particularly girls, often escalate. And marrying a girl off for economic reasons or for safety reasons becomes this kind of, again, a solution to a problem. Seventh and finally, we saw that with the rise of religious fundamentalism more broadly in many places, religion is often used as a dominant identity marker. We then see attempts for social change as presented as an attack on religious values. These social issues, such as child marriage, become proxies for what is termed a more broadly anti-religious or anti-family agenda. So I know that's quite a lot, and you're going to have a chance to discuss it and speak about whether any of these relate to your context in just a moment. But I want to just give you one or two short quotes here. I'm not going to read them, but I'm going to leave them up as I hand over to Noor just to speak briefly about, is there a particular one of those routes that he sees in his particular context? But these quotes here, they're both different examples of ways in which fears and taboos about sex shape an acceptance of child marriage. Noor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina. Actually, the when you are talking about the roots of the ending the child marriage, so like in Pakistan or in some part of the Afghanistan as well, so like the early child marriage is seen as a protective mechanism that like or against insecurity. Because let me give you an example. When during the COVID days, COVID-19 days, people used to the early child marriages war or the that was there was increase seen in the early child marriages because of the poverty, insecurity, and people used to have this commonality in their mindset that like when they will be getting married their daughters at the age of like early ages, their their responsibility will be they will be have less responsibility when then these girls when they will be getting married to the men, they will be they will be responsibility of someone else. And also the religious narratives are sometimes used to legitimize the early marriages, as you said that fathers can delay it. There is a cultural and social and political support, but like nowadays there are, if we can see that like there are the logics behind to stop and to resist the early child marriages is the powerful advocates of child rights and girls education, and that's having some of the perception which is shifting faster than the external campaigns. So we need to we need to sit and discuss all these things not only with the upper high level religious leaders. When you are discussing this thing sometime like it is also been observed that at some time these high level religious leaders says that like yeah, I didn't have any other chance to resist the child marriage because I am holding this space or I am holding this position in the community. But when they are coming in the private sittings, they actually resist the child marriage, and they say that like that's what I was saying in front of the people because of my position or the position which I'm holding on government, but it is not allowed. So we need to bring the grassroots level the religious leaders to discuss, and this is what like we need to and as you said that like marriage is a protection for both and girls, boys and girls, and people seem in our communities that like we when we get married, our girls and boys, we will be having less responsibility on our shoulders. As and also in 2022 floods, when there was a disaster, catastrophic floods in Pakistan. So I was deployed in the province of Sindh, and there is a high rise. During the floods, people were getting married their girls because they were living in the camps situation, and the camps is not that much secure for girls at that age. So people were getting married their daughters of early, like it was 14 and 16, but now government is thinking about it. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. And you can see the quotes up on the screen, highlighting really similar things that we said. So I want to highlight that these roots, whilst they may seem, sort of abstract in some ways, we actually see them playing out in very, very real
Yeah.
context. And thank you for making it real, for us in that respect, Noor. Okay, so Noor's going to handle our plenary session. I know that it's hard. We have 10 minutes. We only had three groups, so that's a couple of minutes per group, so that we have our body break in time. Over to you, Noor.
Thank you so much. I was like, yeah, definitely. I hope every group have their own discussion, and I was also a part of a one group. So during that group, we actually nominated Juliet Beck as a reporter for the plenary. Yes, we are going directly to the group two, and once we heard back from group two, then we will be hearing from group one. Yes, over to you, Juliet, please.
Thank you. Um, yeah, so our group, I'll just be brief.
Tanya, if you can switch off, mute yourself. No, it's not you. Okay.
Um, yeah, so we had Noor and then Beauty from Zimbabwe, and they shared. We had a third person as well, but we didn't have time to hear from everyone. And so both of them shared about the relationship between religion and culture and how sometimes those get kind of mixed and can be the same thing. Or it's hard to separate what is a religious belief versus a cultural norm. And in the Zimbabwe context, Beauty shared about the mainline churches being deeply rooted in culture and cultural norms and beliefs that contributes to the resistance towards ending child marriage, and then religious leaders who might oppose child marriage then can be seen as being against the cultural values of the religion itself. So that makes maybe people not want to speak up. And also, she talked about the advantages that religious leaders gain from child marriage, especially in the apostolic sect. And it can be difficult for the women that are female leaders, the women leaders, because of all of the beliefs around women must submit and answer to men. And then Noor also shared about in his region and Pakistan, the border with Afghanistan, about cultural values, about like women and girls and boys getting married after puberty, and women not having to hide their face and not being able to go out freely, and also how poverty affects that, because families may feel they don't have a choice and they need to marry their children. And I see that our
Yeah.
yeah.
Adan is also want to add once.
Yes,
Yes.
Adam, if Adam didn't have the chance to speak, please feel free, Adam, to place something in the
Yes.
chat. directly from
Thank you,
you.
Juliet, for sharing the insights of the group. Thank you, Juliet. Juliet is new to this platform, and I didn't met her before, but like she is doing her masters and working with faith leaders. Some of the like she is doing some interviews. So welcome, Juliet, to our group as well. Yes, Adan, please jump in, my dear.
Oh, thank you so much. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, guys?
Hi,
Yes, you are loud and clear, my dear brother.
go for it, Adan.
I have some points to share. One is about to separate culture from religion, whereby many practice justify as religious and are cultural tradition. And another point is the protection narrative, whereby we call it honor and morality, whereby they believe that early marriage protects girl from zina, fear that delaying marriage lead to loss of family honor. Another point, there's something called deep-rooted patriarchy, whereby girls are viewed as dependents whose primary role is marriage and motherhood, whereby we see in this patriarchy that male dominate leadership, hence women lack their voices to be heard. Another point is economic intensities, whereby poverty, that dowry, whereby girl child are seen as financial assets. It is believed that when you have many girl child, that family is rich because there will be the end of exchange of dowry. Also, the last point I would love to share is the limited awareness, whereby our leaders do not fully understand the consequences. Example like the maternal health risk, school dropout, and mental health, whereby the girl child end up having depression. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adan, my dear brother. You actually, comprehensively, well articulately shared all the relevant points, which is very much, relevant and very much relevant to all regions and all contexts, I think. Yes, we are going to hear from the group one. Who is going to report back from group one?
So I don't think we know what groups we're
Yeah,
in.
I suddenly realized I'm not sure that you know which. Susie, can we just say that that's your group? I can't also now can't remember who was in which group. So group
Yeah.
one will be Susie's group, and then group three will be what I'm hoping is
Yeah.
Tanya's.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe.
Sorry, I just
It's
confused. Okay,
okay.
great. So we actually, I wasn't a great moderator because we were like totally just listening to David Rabor, who had just so much amazing information just pouring into us, and so I apologize to the other two members of our group who did Sarah didn't get to say anything. And anyway, forgive me for that. So I'm going to try to share some of what David gave, and he's talking about Kenya in his context, but it also is very relevant to me here in the United States, in Boston, Massachusetts, with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the Christian sects. And all of these things that came up are very similar. So, which I find very interesting. He talked about religious leaders resisting. I'll first go through resisting, and then we'll talk about the root that was shared, is opposing legislation. And that's a big deal. Both Christians and Muslims joining together to oppose legislation on this. And there's, like we just heard from about the social and economic things that get tied into this, the suffering of the poor, the girls getting married off, the cows and the dowry. We actually had a video in our church that was prominent for years about how girls were bought off by cows. I mean, this is in the United States, okay? So this isn't just there in Africa, this is here too. And how our church supported this, that you were more wanted women if they paid more cash for you, right? This is ridiculous. Okay. The legal frameworks, talking about the Freedom Act, and how churches who have money are paying to support against these. They see this is in conflict, that they're taking away your religious freedom. And that is actually a huge cause to resistance against this. And then there's the internal resistance with the traditional practices that go along with sex that are listed on our screen right now that I won't talk about. And I think one of the root causes that David talked about, and I truly believe this, is autonomy, dependence. And this goes across countries. I see David talked about how women or girls from other countries are leaving, where there's war, etc. And then they pair up with someone and the guy's like, I'm going to help you move. And then they marry them and then they're caught in this relationship. And then you're caught in civil laws and you can't necessarily just get out, and you don't realize what you just got in because you got married for $25 or whatever in this really easy marriage that some, pastor performed, and that you don't understand the construct that you're going to get sucked into. And poverty is a driving force of this. But the main one is they want you to be dependent. Women, if they have their own deep independence, that really cuts across their control and power, which is a root cause of a lot of this. So I could keep going, but I'm not going to. Thank you to David, and I'm sorry. I apologize to Sarah and Moango, so forgive me. So much to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Just
Susie.
just
Yes,
just for
please.
the just for time, we'll move to group three in a moment. But if anybody in Susie's group didn't get to share and wants to say something, please do put it in the chat. That means that it's
Yeah.
captured. But I'm not going to move to individuals just because I want us to get to our body break. But please do write something in the chat. Sarah, I know you're French speaking. If you write something in the chat in French, we can make sure it's translated for the record.
Thank you
Tanya.
so much.
Sorry, Noor. Third group. Sorry, Noor, I'm jumping over you. Third
Oh, no,
group.
no, no. It's okay. It's okay. It's
Third
okay. It's
group.
fine.
Third group, please. Tanya, I'm saying it's your group, but just because you were in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start, but I'd really like to bring some of the others in as
No,
well.
of course.
Some really, really good examples. We also had this a really lengthy discussion on this sort of interface between religion and culture. And I spoke about my experience working in the UK with predominantly young girls who were in child marriage situations, predominantly in the Muslim faith. Um, and I've said this before on numerous occasions, we never actually, as social workers, we never actually worked or interacted with faith leaders at all, which I think is a really big mistake. So we would always get the culture response. Well, this is our culture, and this is, this is just the way it is. And so I've always found it really interesting, this sort of this, a battle, I guess, between religion and culture, and which it is, and where those sort of deeper roots come from. So that was my first example, and then the place where I've done more substantive work is in Mozambique on child marriage in and around the legislation and the rollout of the legislation. And again, in that instance, faith leaders didn't really come into it as well. Is this when the legislation came in, and again, I don't think it was widely disseminated. It was during COVID-19. A lot of child marriage went underground. I don't think the law changed anything as such. And then we also had a massive insurgency as well, where in the north of Mozambique, where um, child marriage was sort of used as a weapon of war to keep families safe. So those are my experiences in and around it. But what I'd really like to draw on was a member of our group who spoke about the church in South Africa, in the Eastern Cape, which I thought was really, really fascinating. Do you want to come forward and talk about that example? Sorry, then your name escapes me.
You
I
know
can't.
it. Yeah, my name
Yeah,
is
so
Selina.
yeah. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. So the church is in KZN. I'm just based in the Eastern Cape. So the church is in KZN and it's basically called the Nazareth Baptist Church. It's well, we call it Chembe, and basically in that church they kind of combine the cultural aspect and the religious aspect of child marriages. So the girls in the church grow up and they're groomed for marriage, or they're basically groomed that at a certain age, whenever the man comes to ask her hand in marriage, she should accept. And then the girls who then engage in sex before marriage are sort of chastised. They are even given a certain name in the church, and they sit behind the married women, which is sort of like to shame them. And then those ones who are virgins, they also have like white cloths to cover themselves. So I was just mentioning it that in the rest of South Africa, I do not know yet of a church that practices or that supports child marriages strictly on religious beliefs, but it's this one that kind of like it combines the two, and then but basically it's that's what I was trying to say. So it's a very big church. You can also just like Google it and it's gonna come up, and it's I'm gonna type it here in the chat. And in July, in South Africa in July and in January, they trend quite a lot on social media platforms because people kind of question it, that why is a 16-year-old getting married? They have a mass wedding at the church compound. It's a very huge thing. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Noor, for holding the space. Our sharings are always so rich. And I'm sorry to move us on, but I want us to have a body break. And we will continue to talk about this in our second session, where we'll start to move on to think about strategies. But I hope as you see the slide of the 7 roots and this interconnection, that we can see that these aren't just abstract concepts. These are playing out in our different contexts. They're connecting, and that religion often isn't the sole reason. It's religion plus something. And this is an important thing for us to understand. Many of these routes leads to many different harmful practices. And once when I started looking at child marriage, I thought, well, there's good people who are against child marriage and there's bad people who support it. And I realized how much more complicated it is. And I'll talk a bit about that at the end, that you can be very well-meaning as a parent in all sorts of ways and be trying to protect your child and nevertheless put them into situations of more harm. And wider members, and this is the idea of the skills labs, to use some of the methodologies and approaches and small group discussions that we use on our 12-week course. If you want to know more about that, just go to our website or send me a message, but also reaching out and having discussions with broader people. We did open this up to members from Working Group 3. So it's interesting that they haven't connected with us yet, but we will be discussing a more collaborative understanding of policy issues such as child marriage on the 30th of March. And that will be specifically with Working Group 3. So I'm just going to kick us off again. So we are recording. Just give me a moment. Right, I'm just going to share my slides again. So for our second part of the session, we're going to move a little bit. I know you may feel like we've only just started talking about all the roots and the reasons where they resist, but this is kind of a taster session to really encourage you to take some of these tools away and think about them and workshop them in your own contexts around child marriage, but also around other issues. So we're going to move on now. So in our research, in the light of exploring these 7 roots of resistance, and again, I will give you a link to the full report, it's important to be strategic in terms of how organizations and individuals position themselves in their work and how to engage with religious leaders on child marriage in the light of understanding the hows of resistance and the whys of resistance. And in this report, we then identified 6 strategic areas to think about as you move forward to develop strategies for response. It's important to say that the strategies that you choose need to relate to what you're seeing in your context. There's no simple if X then Y blueprint that's the same for all organizations. Child marriage is deeply contextual. And it's very important that organizations themselves think through how are we going to engage and why. So here are my little, I think it's 7 strategies here again. And these were cross-cutting. We saw these as important across faith and across context. So first, it's important to respect religious leader agency. Now, respecting religious leader agency doesn't mean agreeing with everything they say, but it's saying there has to be genuine respect for religious leaders, their religion, and an understanding of the reasons for or logic of their position. And they also need to be approached without overt judgment. If we walk in saying you're bad people and we disagree with everything you have to say, it's very unlikely that that's going to be a proper conversation. And I'm going to show you a quote from Zimbabwe around that particular issue. So that's the first one. Second, the aim is to build a critical mass for support. So this is convincing enough people, enough faith leaders and people of faith for momentum to start to swing in favour of ending child marriage. And the reason why we say it doesn't have to be everyone is there will always be people in a setting who are firmly resistant. They're going to resist until the end, and you can waste a lot of time trying to change everybody's minds. You actually just have to change enough minds. And this is important to think about in your strategies, your approaches, or else all change can be held up because of one person who just won't change their mind. And we saw this with Tostan working in Senegal, that they were able to build critical mass. Third, it's important to take an integrated approach to child marriage. So Shirley, I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself. Thank you. So third, rather than, and this is ironic because we see in global spaces that child marriage is actually often approached as a standalone or silo issue. There's entire organizations that focus only on child marriage. But what we see when we work in communities is it's a good idea to take an integrated approach, where we see that child marriage connects to other things, such as girl-child agency, such as agency and autonomy, such as patriarchal ideas about sex and sexuality. So if we take this more integrated approach, we don't exceptionalize it, we don't make it stand out, we talk about many things going on in the community. And positive framing of your organization and the intervention that you're doing is also crucial. Religious leaders want to be able to take on a positive champion identity. Sometimes we talk a lot about how to end child marriage, but actually it's about supporting positive things, supporting girls staying in school. And these may be much more effective strategies. What is the positive thing that we want, which child marriage is preventing? And these ideas and approaches can be really important because religious leaders are very happy to stand often for those more positive things. We saw this particularly in Malawi, where a positive framing of the organization really, really helped. Fourth, you actually have to engage with sacred scriptures. And this is difficult. Noor was giving an example earlier. There are examples in my tradition as well. It has to be done by those with some level of religious credibility and training. And two things need to happen here, and this is not just in relation to child marriage. We need to counter the interpretations that may promote child marriage, and we have to do it in a way that is sensitive. Just saying that it's wrong or the sacred texts don't say that may not be the most helpful thing. It's finding alternative approaches, developing new interpretations that can oppose child marriage or support the relinquishment of child marriage. So this direct engagement with authoritative sources is really important. And there's been some really good work done, especially disentangling religion and culture. We see this particularly in Ethiopia. Then you need to work with religious leaders more broadly around their fears around unmarried sex and pregnancy. And this is a very difficult thing to do, so we often don't do it. One has to talk about sex and sexuality, providing basic information, but also creating safe spaces for the perspectives of girls and their lived realities. This is something that is often avoided, but we see that it's often an underlying root that's taboo and is not discussed, but is very prevalent, especially when we see that notion of child marriage as solution to other problems. And Sina, you are sharing really clearly in the Eastern Cape, that notion of virginity and protecting our girls from harm or from taboo or from being defiled by marrying them off early or marrying them off when they get pregnant so that they don't have the shame of being an unwed mother. So really having to engage with those sorts of issues. Purity culture as well, which I'm not going to go into in detail. Finally, it's important to understand, and this is true, I think, for all of our contexts, particularly the USA, Susie, at this point in time, and Pakistan, politics and religion more broadly are often closely connected. This means that any engagement we make with religious leaders needs to make strategic choices about how it's going to respond to this wider alignment with politics and religion in that context. So we've seen this in Malaysia and Pakistan. There might be a wider sort of anti-Western, or in Africa, sort of an anti-decolonization narrative that is utilized to support child marriage. So these are really important decisions. And in a sense, it's saying you need to make these decisions whichever approach you take. I'm just going to give a quote here from Hope in Zimbabwe that really landed well with me. She says, the most important thing is whenever you approach someone, do not go to them and act as if you are accusing them of doing something wrong. The most important thing is to engage with someone. You sit down, you talk, you hear their side of the story, hear where they're coming from, the reasons why they do certain things, and hear from them the benefit of these things, and maybe just discuss the advantages and disadvantages of what it is that they are doing. Now, this can be extremely hard on such a sensitive and contentious issue like child marriage, but it is why it is so important, and why approaches that kind of tend to demonize anybody who considers child marriage isn't always helpful and can close down conversations. Noor, I wanted to hand over to you. Obviously, those are just a few tips around sort of different strategies, just to share briefly a little bit about what you're seeing as being effective in your context. And then we're going to go into our small groups.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina. Let me, because like we have been practicing this methodology, which is at GLI as well. It is developed for especially for UNICEF cross-sectorial interventions, and we call it mind and heart dialogue. This approach works very positively, while in most of the cases, most programs miss this. So, child marriage is not just a knowledge gap, it's a belief, value, and social norms issues. What we do and why MHD works is that child marriage persists because it is seen as protection of honor, religious or moral obligations, or economic necessity. And how MHD work is it challenge assumptions without confrontation, creating safe spaces, trusted spaces for reflection and sharing experiences, linking faith values with child well-being. And this is what important is that it is discouraging the instrumental approach of development sector, which is being on and off one like engaging with the faith leaders. So it builds trust amongst the religious leaders and the faith-based communities and the development partners, that how we can work together. It is not about to challenge anything. It is about to dialogue for the positive change, to bring the positive change within the communities, and how we could be betterly productive for our communities. And I'll be in upcoming days, hopefully I'll be sharing one of the session on MHD. This is one of the practiced based methodology which we are practicing here in South Asia as well, with the UNICEF partners and local grassroots faith leaders. And I hope in upcoming days we will be sharing it. So just as like the strategies which you shared is, if we can club it in one aspect, and to avoid the instrumentalized approach of development sector and humanitarian sector, it will be having a very much good impact. And this relationship need to be long term, not on and off with the religious leaders. That is decreasing the trust level of the faith leaders. Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you so much. And I think that commitment to long-term dialogue, and I love that notion of the heart-mind dialogue. It's not just a knowledge gap, and this enables us also to look at current child marriage related strategies and recognize where there are gaps in how they are approaching this situation that may even make resistance worse. So alongside strategies, practitioners shared kind of top tips, and a lot of those were just things: don't make assumptions, do your background research, think about who you want to engage within religious leaders, don't just randomly pick. Choose your entry point carefully. So the entry point wasn't always child marriage. It might be girl-child education, or violence prevention, or women's rights, or child protection. So sometimes a broader entry point can be really, really valuable. And use the existing avenues of engagement. And that's why religious leader engagement can be so important. Don't set up a parallel system somewhere else. And then another thing, saying be sensitive with our language or terminology. There's a certain kind of language that may be used in global spaces around child marriage, but people in the local context may have different words which they use. different ways in which they explain what is going on, and to be sensitive and respectful of that in order to have a more productive dialogue. So just a couple of tips. And again, the research has far more detail of all of these different kinds of things. Again, it's just one question. And this is really, again, thinking now a little bit more about what do you see as working? And that might be what you see as working or what you think could work in your context, addressing religious resistance to ending child marriage or mobilizing those religious leaders to act for change.
Thank you so much. And we have a very good discussion in our groups as well. We would like to hear from Juliet as a reporter, and Abdul Razak Adan had shared very comprehensive points as well. So what are two key highlights, Juliet, if you can share it from the group?
Yeah, I think Abdul Razak has most of the main points to share, but people spoke about having dialogue sessions, not just with religious leaders, but also elders or maybe traditional leaders in a community, and also emphasizing the health perspective, the health risks of child marriage. So, not just talking about religious or cultural values, but also the health risks. So, but
Yeah. Thank you so much, Juliet, for the key insights. And we also should discuss that there should be, we need to create safe spaces where girls' empowerment and gender equality need to be emphasized, where we can orient and aware the girls on their rights, as well as we need to create safe spaces where we can leverage our discussion with the education, with health, and with the wisdom, which we also discuss one of the verse of Holy Quran, that when there is wisdom, when a girl is a girl or boy have the wisdom, they can be more beneficial to carry on their family, as well as their to support their upbringing of their upcoming children as well. So this is some of the discussion. I think Abdul Razak Adan would be adding few more points if we missed something, because he's praying as well. It's the Asr
Very
time.
short.
Yeah.
Okay, very short because we've only got sort of 2 minutes for each group. But Anne, if there's
Okay.
anything quick you'd like to add, go for it. Or maybe
In
Adan's
the
at prayer at
meantime,
the moment.
yeah. In the meantime, Susie can share her group's proceedings.
Okay, first of all, survivor voices should be at the center of this. And I will never forget being at an academic setting and having the First Lady of Sierra Leone actually tell her story of running from child marriage. And when you hear those testimonies, that cuts to the heart and the chase of so much of this. Okay, so now I want to go to our group and what we actually talked about. Dialogues, bringing together religious leaders in councils of churches. David emphasized safe places. That's really important, where they're not judged, that you have dialogue, awareness, and then action-based accountability. And one of the things that talked about was, I thought this was so cool, in their churches, they put up posters saying we don't support this here, and actually talking about it and saying, you're not going to get married here. We just don't support that. Really cool. So making it, displaying it, saying we don't support this. And also Molabo talked about training the leaders as champions. You have a pool of leaders, facilitators, to go out and to work with other leaders, depending, how the church is organized and structured, but to help make a army of people to help fight this. So that's kind of what we talked about.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much,
much,
Susie.
Susie. Sorry, no. So Tanya
Yeah.
had to leave. So Christian
Yes.
Mahala, I think, is going to report back from group 3. Christian, over to you. You're on mute at the moment, so I know. Go for it.
Good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
You're a little bit soft, Christian. Is there any way for you to improve your volume a little bit?
Yes, I don't know that I'm hard enough.
It's okay. We'll listen carefully, but maybe just speak up a bit.
Oh, okay. So my hours was we are so happy to be part of this. But according to our discussion, what we were discussing about, we found out that it's really important to share information at all levels about these children marriages, gender-based violence, places, and the value of the woman wherever we are in our communities, whereby this happens because the women have no voice and cannot be given chances. And it was seen that religious leaders need really information and enough and continuous, shouldn't be occasional, but really enough, and do this every day. And it should be inter-religion, where Muslims, Protestants, or Christian faith, all the faith, kind of faith, gather and share the same information. For this, we need to package information to give them that can be related to the belief of the Muslim, to the Christian, to the Orthodox, and so that whenever we discuss it, we get a common understanding about this issue, and everyone takes responsibility. We talked about the cultural leaders need to be involved so much, and also to know different cultures, to have information that cuts across and bring everyone at the level of understanding. And we need more to involve the children themselves that are concerned, from 14 to 16, 18 years, 20 years, to understand the consequences of early marriages, whereby the rest of life will be difficult for them if really they can't pay a big attention to this, and they cannot resist from anything that can draw them to that early marriage. And then at the family levels, we need to involve families. Take the children, young children, to sing the same song, no early marriage within families. Father and mother are involved, neighbors are involved. Each and everyone makes it a song, and it will really make impact. One side we saw to do this, it needs some financial support, whereby group and religious institutions that may need to do it very well may need really to be equipped with not only knowledge, but also some finances to move that agenda well, whereby we really need to be making it as an everyday gospel. And this will bring a very bigger change, because the lack of information for many communities, most especially where for us we live in Central and Eastern Africa, it really needs, because cultures and beliefs have taken it as normal. Child can just go like that and no one minds. Yet you find children, family-headed, are getting many, many problems, and they are becoming a very big challenge for the society, which we need to combat for now if we need children to have a space in the second world to come tomorrow. Otherwise, they may not have a space if we don't start now. Thank you so much.
Christian, thank you so much. Such rich feedback. Thank you, everyone. I really think that point that Christian made about the interreligious engagement, there's a tendency with child marriage to blame someone else. Oh, those people over there that do that. And I think we've seen, even just in this session, the cross-cutting nature of child marriage and the roots that underpin it. And the way in which we can weave together these common threads. I really like what Susie said about being visible, churches being visible and saying, no, we don't support this. And also the vocality of survivors, placing survivors at the center and their voices and their experiences. So a lot of really, really important insights there. And yes, how do we reframe notions such as wisdom, principles of wisdom, of love, of compassion, of agency within our religious traditions, and actually really engage with those theologically and not shy away from that. So thank you so much, all of you. I hope that you're intrigued. I've placed on the chat the more detailed reports, but I hope you're intrigued, even if you don't work directly on child marriage, to see the ways in which these harmful practices emerge out of a common web of attitudes and norms and beliefs that can be harmful. And they are intersecting. Child marriage is your classic complex intersecting issue. Age meets gender, meets poverty, meets culture, meets religion. So it's not just one thing. And the reasons for marrying off a 17-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old are rarely the same. We have to understand the differences that come with those different patterns. Decisions must be made also about how to assist girls that are already married. Sometimes we're focused so much on how do we stop girls getting married that we don't connect to the realities of girls that are already married and what they need. We also need to recognize that religions are diverse. Whilst we are different religions within one religion and between religious leaders, there's enormous diversity. And those religions may appeal to different sources of authority, even within one religion. For example, independent churches in Zimbabwe may appeal to the Holy Spirit. Islamic leaders in Malaysia may appeal to particular religious texts or stories. Hindu priests in India may appeal to a religiously legitimated caste system. So understanding, not just saying, oh, it's religion, but what is it? What are the authority sources in religion that are being misused? And then I just want to say it's really important to recognize the agency of adolescent girls. Ironically, sometimes child marriage is entered into by adolescents because they're seeking freedom from parental control. They think that this will help to emancipate them and to give them more freedom. That is often a trap, but we actually need to understand and enable adolescent girls and adolescent boys to participate in this conversation and hear stories of what may happen to them. And this is currently lacking, both in religious circles, where they're often just shamed and silenced, but also, ironically, in international development discourse, where these girls can be positioned as helpless objects to be rescued, not as subjects to be engaged and listened to. And then finally, I just want to stress we need to be using an asset-based approach for religious leaders. If we position them as a liability, as a problem of something we have to fix, and we close down dialogue. And that's why this report, which focuses only on the resistance aspects, needs to be handled with care. We don't start conversations by focusing on the negative. We need to find some positive points of connection. And I hope that in this session, we've heard some examples of ways in which that has happened. And this involves some decisions, some things to do, some things not to do. And I just want to encourage you as you go away today to think a little bit about ways in which this research encourages us to think about understanding the issue before we jump too quickly into solutions. What are the types of resistance that we see in our context? What are the roots that underpin those forms of resistance? What are, therefore, some of the strategies that we want to develop? And what are some of the things that we need to make sure that we do or don't do in how we approach that strategy? All of these lead to positioning decisions, which are crucial if we are to discuss not only the issue and the practice of child marriage, but what lies beneath. What are the roots? If we cut off the heads of child marriage, they will just resurge again unless we look at those roots. So just to encourage you to think about that in your own context. And I'm going to hand back over to Noor to wrap us up for today. Noor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina. And indeed, it was a very productive discussion. We discussed so many things, and we have so many, uh, perspectives from all across the region, as well as from all faiths as well. Uh, if like how like this session, if like you guys can share your feedback, how did you find this session? And if you found this skill lab more productive and positive, so what was the helpful in terms of the content or processes? And if you want to suggest any of the further topic for future topic in the area of faith, gender, and violence against children, that you would like to have uh, uh, in the upcoming days, it would be more than welcome. So if anyone wants to share and suggest future topics in this area, it is or like floor is open for you. Short, please keep it short and
And please
uh,
also feel free
smart.
to use the chat. We've got a
Yes.
couple of moments. We're obviously wrapping up, but we've got a couple of moments. So very happy. Any final comments and feedback is really valuable. This is our first 2-hour skills lab. So please do take a moment to give us a little bit of feedback in the chat, or just unmute yourself and share maybe something final that has come up for you at the end of this session, as we have a couple of minutes as we wrap up. And a particular thank you to those of you who are new to Working Group 2. There is more information about that in the chat if you want to find out more. Our LinkedIn group, and also a link to the SVRI page. So please find out more there. Thank you, everyone, and a particular thanks to Noor, who is currently fasting and praying. I'm sure he's always praying, but we really appreciate him taking the time to hold this space and to give us such amazing concrete examples from his experience in his context. So thank you, Noor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selina, and thank you so much, everyone who made it happen, and everybody showed up in this important discussion. And I hope we will be having some more discussion in upcoming days.
There's just one question that we're going to be exploring. Noor and I will also be in the groups. We're going to be exploring one question, and you're going to have 12 minutes to do this. So it's just one question, and I'm going to encourage you, I know this is going to feel hard, not to jump to solutions. One of the things we learned is that actually spending time to understand how are religious leaders resisting in your different contexts, and what the roots are that you think inform that resistance. And you may not know all of this detail for your context, but I just want you to share what you think, what you've seen, what you feel. And we're going to we'll have a second small group in the second session where we'll be exploring strategies. So that time will come. But and